Hey everybody, this is Greg with Medical Muscle, and I want to share with you some observations I made of people who've done very well in the first year and a half that I've been in medical school, and some people who have done very poorly to the point where they have failed. Okay, so these are just my observations. You can take them however you want. Just as a little disclaimer, everybody that gets into medical school, for the most part, is a pretty smart person, and these differences they're small differences, but they add up, okay? These little things. So the first major difference that I see is, being ready mentally for the pace of medical school. This is more towards people in term one. I think some of the people that have to retake in term one, it's not that they're not smart, it's that they weren't ready for this level of pace. It's crazy. It's way more than what you would be used to in your normal undergrad. If you have to retake, it's not a big deal, especially in the first two terms. If you do have to retake, it might just be that situation, okay? That you weren't quite ready. So point number two is how focused the person is when they study. So some of my friends that are really good students, they just have a different level of focus. They can sit and just work for like an hour at a time and just focus. The students who didn't do too well, I'm going to be brutally honest, were getting up every 10 minutes, checking their phone every 5 minutes. You're setting yourself up for failure. Or studying with friends, have people there, you're chit-chatting. I'm not saying that you can't avoid those completely. I mean, some people do well, but I think people set themselves up for failure. Okay, so if you have an issue with distractions, seriously, you have to know that, and you have to make those decisions to optimize your time. Me, I'm very distracted. I'm extremely distracted. So for me, I have to avoid sitting with my friends. I delete all my apps off my phone. I delete all my apps off my laptop, turn off all notifications. So there's no way for me to just easily, click off and get distracted. I do sometimes. I can override that, but it makes it harder for me. And that's what I have to do, okay? That's huge. I think people who don't do as well don't have that self-control. That's it, And I think some of the other good students that I've talked to have gotten chancellors, over 95%. They know that they don't have that self-control, and they've done the same thing. So that's something you really need to think about if you want to be a really good student. Okay, now another thing in just general, especially on the island, is distractions in general. Okay, maybe you're at home, your family can be distracting. Maybe you're on the island, the beach can be really distracting, the bar can be really distracting. Okay, so how willing you are to make certain sacrifices. I think really good students, they can go and have fun. I've met a lot of them that have a lot of fun, but when it comes to work time, they're working hard, okay? They're working hard, and they're working hard for a long time. They're putting in the hours. Being a hardworking person is a huge benefit. If you've worked, if you know what overtime feels like, if you've put in 10, 12 hours, whatever, in a day in and day out, then you're ready for medical school. Because a lot of it's just work, and I think people are not, especially if you're an undergrad, you're used to like maybe having class for 4 hours or something like that, and maybe studying for a couple hours outside of that. You're not working like overtime. You don't know what that feels like. You don't know what it feels like to work, 6, 7 days in a row. So it comes down to work, can you work? Yeah, so that's a big factor. Now another point is not just working hard, but some people are not working hard enough. Obviously that makes sense, but some people are working too hard. I had a friend who worked very hard, very, very, very hard, and ended up having to retake. Just because you're working hard doesn't necessarily mean that you're learning it the right way. You have to be able to adapt. Okay, I think people get stuck into what worked in the past, and they try to stick with that same thing. And when they see their grades are not going up, they still keep sticking with that same thing. And honestly, with me, I've noticed I've had to change my study habits every single term, from term 1 to term 4. Okay, so you have to adapt your study style because it progressively gets harder and harder. Okay, so working too hard, using too many resources, focusing too much on like say Anki or boards and beyond, people just get stuck into a certain way of studying, and you know, taking handwritten notes. Like those things are great. You know, a lot of them are great for helping with memory retention, but at a certain point, you have to keep up with the pace. So there's a balance, and I think some people get stuck and they don't adapt. Is that now? Another factor that I've noticed with really good students is that they enjoy the content. And I gotta say, I enjoy the content too. It can be hard. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's hard to understand, and it's not fun to try to cram all this information in. But I like, in general, this branch of content is perfect for me. I originally went to school for engineering. Content was enjoyable for me, so I didn't want to stick it out. This has to do with the human body. I was a personal trainer for a long time. Anything that has to do with the human body, I love it. So this is all like very interesting, and my friends who've done very well, they find it very interesting too. They'll look up articles outside and say, hey, look, check this out. Look what I looked up. You know, you have to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy this stuff, this might not be the career for you, okay? Now, obviously, you gotta be a smart person. I mean, the people who do well are probably on the smarter side of my classmates. You know, they're just, you talk to them, they just sound like smart people. But I think it's not just being smart, it's doing these things that I've just talked about. You know, being efficient with your time, you know, not working too hard, but when you do sit down, you know, you're totally focused, enjoy the content. I think it's a combination of all these things. That's what makes a good, smart student. You know, it's not some gift that you get, it's incorporating all these things, okay? They're small things and they can make a big difference. Now, as a final note, at term 4, you know, maybe not as much in term 1 and 2, maybe, you know, there is some weed out, maybe some people who weren't meant for medicine, you know, they weren't ready for this, and especially in the Caribbean. But at this level, at term 4, there's students that I know who probably got A's all through undergrad who failed. It's also just really hard. It comes down to really pushing, you know. It's kind of a scary thing. You know, I want to do really well, and I've had to work harder every term to get a slightly worse grade. I've put in way more work than I've ever put in my life, every single term, more and more, and I'm doing slightly worse every time, okay? So it also comes down to just, it's hard, you know, and if you do fail, and you do have to retake, you know, you're not a dumb person at all. You're still an incredibly smart person. This is just a beast, okay? So if you can change one of these things, then you can kick ass too. All right, guys. So best of luck on your exams.